an instant, a fact, a picture, an opinion can reverberate around the world with none of the safeguards that govern traditional media. Do you think before you tweet? Let's get started. And a very good evening and welcome to the Democracy Gauge. I'm Bongani Bingwa. In assessing 25 years of democracy, tonight we focus on what social media has brought to the democratic dialogue. A simple hashtag from pay back the money to Me Too or data must fall or fees must fall. There's now a new way in which our story is being told and it's unfolding before our very eyes. 23 million of us are active social media users in South Africa. South Africans spend an average of 2 hours, 48 minutes using social media each day via any device. When last did you even make a phone call? Do you even know your ringtone? Well, most of our data is spent on likes, shares and posts. A device like this is an indispensable portal into the 21st century world. So now then, on to our poll question tonight. Is social media a force for good in our democracy? You can choose from our three colors. Green is for yes, yellow is for maybe, and red, of course, is for no. And you can interact with our poll topic on Facebook and on Twitter. Remember to use the hashtags SABCDG25 and hashtag SABC News. We of course also ask you to send us your WhatsApp videos on 065 862 4548. Now, if anyone has the power to publish, how can you know what is true and what is not? What measures can be taken to ensure that what is published can be trusted? Does anyone think before they tweet? Our reporter Lindiwe Mabena produced this insert.
Every day around the world, people post around 500 million tweets. They range from political statements, pleas for help, to questions on what's bothering people. With the ever-growing popularity of Twitter, South Africans are now forced to think and tweet. Companies have introduced social media law policies which dictate how their employees should behave while expressing themselves on the internet.
If an employee is saying anything, making any comments on social media that can be insulting, that can be unacceptable, that can be even discriminatory in a nature, then the employer, by its vicarious liability, is also held to be liable in terms of the employee's actions and comments made. So companies need to make sure that they protect other individuals as well. And by virtue of the fact that employees make comments, that can be coming back to the employer at the end of the day, and the employer have to then be responsible and take responsibility for that.
Over the past 2 years, the Commission for Conciliation, Mediation and Arbitration has facilitated over 50 disputes involving people who had used social media to their disadvantage. Television and radio personality Gareth Cliff and former Hawks spokesperson Macintosh Polela are some high-profile people who were shown the door by their employers for their unpalatable tweets in 2013 and 16 respectively. While Cliff was later reinstated on technicalities, pay TV channel Mnet maintains its decision to fire the media personality was correct. While irresponsible posts won't only get you fired, you could also be sued for defamation.
Employers need to be proactive and to educate people to say what can be the consequences of that. But one thing that employees need to understand is once you've said something, you cannot take it back.
The Freedom of Expression Institute agrees that people need to be mindful of the damage irresponsible posts could have. It is, however, urging companies not to stifle debate.
The Constitution does protect your right to freedom of speech, and it's only under certain circumstances where a line is drawn to say it mustn't be hate speech, it mustn't advocate the use of violence and or propaganda. So that is, you have a right to, and is protected constitutionally. But the issue around how robust you say things is something that through case law and precedent is also acknowledged, that given our history, what used to happen around freedom of speech, and given the frustrations that people feel, that it's okay to be robust. It's okay to really describe things in as raw a manner as possible.
Mokene is also calling on companies not to come down too hard on offenders, but to instead find ways to educate workers on the importance of expressing their views without tweeting themselves out of a job. Lindiwe Mabena, SABC News, Johannesburg.
So is social media a force for good in our democracy? Joining the conversation now is Okrebia Ampofo-Anti, who's a legal consultant specializing in media law and data protection, as well as Dumisola, also a lawyer and of course the founder of #CountryDuty. Good evening to the both of you and thank you for joining us. Dumi, let me start with you. I mean, anybody now is officially a publisher. People don't often think before they tweet, and once it's out there, there's no return, there's no coming back.
Indeed. Good evening to your viewers and everyone else who's going to join us through the WhatsApp line. I think that's actually true. In fact, what you see on Twitter, there's an account that actually shows you what you've deleted, interestingly. So Twitter is effectively a system where people tweet and engage and correspond, at times fight, but you are able to, when you've deleted something, certain accounts pick it up, and the power of a screenshot. So there's definitely sometimes no coming back there.
It's there for posterity. Right, talk to me, what motivated you, because you're one of the game changers in terms of how we engage with Twitter, especially #CountryDuty, what brought that about?
Yeah, I think, one has to look at the current state of affairs. I think it really stems from, I would say, the Zuma years, amongst other things, but also the need to give people a voice to a certain extent. So the question has always been, I think, for us and the team in CountryDuty is, what then after Zuma has left, for example? What then after Cyril has left, or whatever the situation in the country? But is there a way of us using social media for good, for it to be able to be sustainable? And I think that's what CountryDuty does.
How did it start? Was it just a tweet on a Sunday evening, you were upset about something, or did you actually have a plan?
I think, really, to be honest with you, there have been two folds insofar as that is concerned. Firstly, there's been people who've been on Twitter to gut the country, amongst other things. But that's what it was, right? But for me, there's always been a gap as to what else, over and above doing that, what can we do? But there's always been an injustice where people don't know where to complain, how to complain. And after raising a few tweets, that's when one realized that there's engagement, and that's how one can be able to engage. And that's when it picked up.
Right, you're both lawyers by profession, as I said in my introduction there, but Okrebia, someone like Dumi may be responsible with his platform, but there are many people who, upon engaging with a platform like this, can take this to another level, unaware of the consequences.
Yes, lamentably, Bongani, that is indeed the case. And I think that the sad thing about humanity is that everything that we create, which has incredible power for good, also has within it the seed for problems. And I think that's what's happened with social media platforms. So people like Dumi use it to do incredible social goods, but people don't seem to realize that social media and the online world, it's the same as the real world in terms of legal consequences.
Talk to me about some of the problems. What are some of the worst examples you've engaged with in terms of people being abusive on social media and paying the price?
Well, I think in terms of paying the price, unfortunately, there aren't as many people who do pay the price. I mean, one of the examples that we dealt with was for a large corporation where someone had gone online and was making all sorts of completely false allegations. I mean, we were brought in to investigate the allegations, etc. There was just no truth to it. But at the end of the day, the person was using a fake Twitter account. And despite having to go to court and get a court order to enable us to go to the service providers to get the RICA details of this individual, the whole thing came to a dead end because we found out that they had bought a pre-RICA'd, basically corrupted SIM card, and we couldn't get to the bottom line of who it was. And I think those are some of the challenges around lack of accountability.
But if somebody doesn't take those precautions, if somebody just tweets because they're shooting from the hip, they're emotional in that moment, and they disseminate things that are false, things that are defamatory, and so on, what are the potential consequences for that?
Well, that's where I think if people don't remember anything else, they must remember that social media and the real real world have the same legal consequences. So if you wouldn't go to the side of the road and hold up a placard that says Otrebian Popo Auntie is corrupt, she's stolen money, etc., then you can't do the same thing on social media without consequences. So we have defamation laws in this country, we have laws against hate speech in this country, we have privacy laws that protect privacy in this country, and all of those things apply with equal force online.
Dumi, a lot of people will obviously agree with you and support what you do, but not everybody who does so necessarily is somebody you might support. I mean,
yes.
You've started conversations that have grown a life of their own at times. Have you had moments where you've regretted some of what you've put out there based on who comes to the party?
Of course. And one thing that I would say, pride ourselves on as part of the hashtag Country Duty team is when you've made a mistake, you have to apologize. There was an instance where we would get information from a tweet, and with racial issues, it's always topical, right? Someone sent through an info, it says ex-employee works for X bank, and this is what they're saying, they're praising the South African apartheid flag. Would you please just, make some noise and let's get a response from this bank? What we didn't do is our checks and balances. We then rushed onto Twitter. In fact, I did. Right? I went in and I said, listen, we've just received this information. It's a certain, in fact, we found out that it was a fake name, true to your point. Said, listen, we've been told and being informed that this person works at X Bank. Is this what you subscribe to? By the time before X Bank responds, that tweet has a life of its own,
It's
right?
a big thing.
And became apparent.
All right. We'll talk about some of these conversations and I suppose the democratization of the news cycle through social media. Yeah. These were problems we didn't have in 1994. After the break, we'll gauge your views on whether social media is a force for good for this democracy. Stay tuned.
Hello and welcome. I'm your host and I'm not alone. We have the soulful, Grammy-winning Soweto Gospel Choir who'll be performing for us later on in the show. Your insurer shouldn't decide whether you can add ubabizala, umzala, or even umamizala to your funeral plan. The Outsurance Funeral Plan lets you build your cover with benefits that suit your needs. Choose cover between 30 and 100,000 Rand. Add family members and select cash benefits important to you like transport, catering, after tears, a tombstone, or a marquee.
The way he proposed the insurance thing to me, it was very fantastic. The approach was nice and smooth, so it didn't take even long. Only 193 Rand a month for 75,000 cover. The pause and play feature is very important. I can pause for 3 months if I have financial difficulties, and then I can proceed without starting afresh from the beginning.
At Outsurance, we base your premiums on your unique profile to offer you the cheapest premium we can. You can get 50,000 Rand worth of funeral cover for on average just 4 Rand a day from Outsurance Life.
I'm a new Outsurance client, but I've known about Outsurance through TV advertising. And I was like, there's something good about this Outsurance. Then I decided, let me try it. For only 177 per month for a cover of 50,000 Rands. I've covered myself, I've covered my son Tado, and I have benefits as well. Yeah, I think this is a great deal.
Bakhaeshu, finally, a low-cost funeral cover that you can tailor to your needs and that suits your pockets.
SMS code to 44506 or visit outsurance.co.za to complete a free quote on a funeral plan tailored to suit your needs and budget.
Outsurance Funeral Plan. You always get something out.
Welcome back. It's all about you here on the Democracy Gate. So the People's View allows you to interact with us and to share some of your views. Let's find out what people are saying on WhatsApp.
In my case, I have a case in Wynberg Court where I was given, or where I saw a sheriff coming into my house bringing this warrant of execution against my property. Meanwhile, the case is not concluded. So I believe that social media can do good for myself there. It can expose that Wynberg Court and that magistrate that is sitting for my case.
We've seen a lot of good causes that have started on social media, people getting jobs, people reaching out to government officials, but I think we should be very cautious of how we express ourselves on social media.
For me, it's a good force. Yenza kahle iyaveza izinto ekufanele zibe khona ngexesha elifanele. Kodwa kwelinye icala ifuna ukuthi sikwazi ukuyibheka. I think mhlawumbe in the coming future ingadevelopa la sizokwazi ukuthi umuntu mangaba eveze into engekho reliable akwazi ukuba liable for lokho abhekane necala lalento into ezinjengalezo or akwazi ukutrack ukuthi uyithatha kaphi into enjalo uyibona kanjani. Kodwa yona okwangoku iyenza kahle kakhulu social media.
Social media has got its positive and negative impact. And I think that we should be able to draw the line between the two. Now, the good part about the social media is that it has been able to allow us to voice out our views and to find many information that we weren't able to find. But on the other aspect, it has got serious negative impact, whereby you find that there's misrepresentation of information, which can hinder the process of democracy.
I generally think that social media is a good force for democracy because I believe that it offers the opportunity for each and every citizens to have a say or have a direct influence on what they are not happy about. But then again, it's something to note that in an era that we're living in today where false news are rapidly shared everywhere, it does have that negative connotation to it.
Well, that's what you have to say. We continue the conversation now with Okrebia Ampofu-Anti, a legal consultant specializing in media law and data protection, as well as Dumisolo, also a lawyer, but the founder of #CountryDuty, now a non-profit organization using social media to mobilize action on social matters. Okrebia, let me just come back to you. I mean, the gist of what people are saying via their WhatsApp videos is that it's this balancing act between a force for good and a force for bad. Talk to me about regulation. Where are we as far as what the law allows and what it doesn't in South Africa? Or is that a moot point because it's social media?
No, it's not a moot point. I think the challenge with where we are at, not just in South Africa, but in most countries around the world, is that this beast of social media has really come upon us without preparation by regulators. And so everyone is really grappling with it at the moment. So we don't have specific legislation that's in place that says this is what you can say, this is how it must be taken down, etc., etc. Our laws just haven't moved to that point yet. And I'm not sure if they need to, because the way in which our courts have been dealing with the situation is that they are taking existing principles. Hence my point about social media is just like the real world. They're taking existing legal principles and applying them to social media cases. So defamation laws have been applied very successfully to cases where people are defamed on platforms like Facebook, for example, has had a number of cases where people were defamed there, and people have been able to get posts taken down from Facebook, interdicts. People have even gotten damages from people who have defamed them on social media. So our law is at work, but it is really very much in the early stages. And of course, there are certain things that have to be transformed. For example, how do you deal with a retweet? How do you deal with a forwarding of things, etc., etc.
Everyone wants to be, to have a number of followers, to have the most likes. And so people, exactly as Okrebia says, Dumi, they don't think about what they retweet. They don't think about what they share. I mean, so much of what's gone viral is around bullying, for example. We've seen videos, the lifestyles and the personal details of just stuff that really wouldn't otherwise be there. What's your message to people who think they can replicate your success on Twitter?
I think for me, the success, if it's really seen as such, in fact, it ought to be replicated. What we've always said is, country duty is a South African hashtag. If it's been used for good, so be it. And let people basically do their country duty in their respective provinces, places and stuff. Definitely, insofar as consequences, they are there. And I think it's very important to basically think before you tweet or retweet in certain instances. You have to push the boundaries sometimes to gauge, but you have to do so responsibly.
Be smart about it. Do what you would
100%.
do in normal life, right? If you were standing in a public square, do what you would do in that instance. All right, I'll have you guys have your opinion. Is social media a force for good in this democracy? Ocrabia, green is yes, yellow is maybe, red is no.
I'll say maybe, because I'm a lawyer. And I'm always on the fence.
T's and C's apply. All right, to me, same question, same answer.
I'll definitely go for green. I think, the Twitter streets can attest to that. People have been employed through social media. People are doing great things. People are advertising on social media, and I think it's such a great platform, it has to be embraced.
It's the democratization of the news, as I like to say it. 100%. Thank you, both of you, for being in the studio and being a part of this fascinating discussion. Now, when we return, we're going to meet a 38-year-old, Iresh Pillay. You don't want to miss this. Stay tuned.
Electricity. Electricity is the lifeblood for commerce, for growth of any economy. You cannot do anything, virtually anything, without electricity. Many African countries are grappling with power supply challenges.
I have a vision that we will end energy poverty in Zimbabwe. And that vision must be realized within the next 12 months.
Catch African Perspective this Wednesday at 9:30 p.m. Central African Time as we discuss energy and power challenges on the continent.
Welcome back. Now, through the Democracy Gauge, SABC News profiles a different South African, and we look at their assessment of the last 25 years. 38-year-old Iresh Pillay was born in Queensborough in South Africa, but has been living in the United States since 2007. He's been keeping a close eye on developments back home.
My name is Iresh Pillay. I grew up in Queensborough, small town just outside Durban, South Africa. Did my accounting studies at UKZN and thereafter moved to Johannesburg to complete my traineeship as a CA. Spent about 5 years in Joburg, thereafter moving to New York. I'm a very passionate South Africa. I mean, it goes without question. I'm involved in something we call the New York, New Jersey Springbok Club. It's in the New York Metro and New Jersey area. And what that essentially does is we host events the fourth Friday of every month, where just down the street in Times Square at a bar, we have a gathering. We make it interesting. We try to have somebody coming in and talking about different initiatives in South Africa, or even things like visas. So something that's going to interest the crowd. For me, if you look at that 25 years, I almost feel like you need to remove the state capture years. So yes, 25 years, I understand that, but I think we got to be intelligent and think about it conceptually, That's why I really hope that the new president of South Africa, which I have a lot of faith in, that he has a difficult task to come in. He's taking over. It's not, like the US, where we have Donald Trump taking over a economy from Obama that was doing well. We have a situation now where Cyril Ramaphosa is taking over and trying to fix a lot of things that went wrong in those 9-10 years. So I think we need to all give him a chance. So I'm actually going to go for the yellow paddle. And the reason for that, this is sort of a choice that I'm making as an individual, myself, and it's not for how South Africa, I guess, perceives the country to be. I'm an optimist. Just growing up, I've always been that way. Very passionate South African. I guess if you ask me this question maybe a few years down the line, this is not the color paddle that I will be holding up. But I have faith, I guess, in the leadership of the country at the moment. I know it's going to be a long road, and that's why I did say I'm hoping that, there is 2 terms. There's a lot of good things in South Africa. I mean, I know people always focus on the negativity, but I mean, I'll give you a small example, and this is one that might even affect everybody. Home Affairs, for example, that's a department that has really went 180. Yes, there's a lot of problems, there's no question, but I think it's time for us to be optimistic about what's going to happen. I know with South African sport brings us together, so who knows, maybe the Rugby World Cup coming up and maybe our Springbok team winning this after 25 years will bring the nation together again as a reset. But I'm optimistic. I suppose confidently optimistic, and I love to see where the country goes in a few years.
Well, let's see if that optimism will be rewarded. So before we say goodbye, let's take a look now at the results for today's poll. Remember, we're asking if social media has been a force for good in our democracy. It would appear that the Greens have it. 55% of you voting yes, 22% maybe, and the Reds are at 23%. Well, thank you for watching. From me, Bongani Bingwa, and the team. Until the next time, ubusuku benzolo. Good night.